Hi guys, how's it going, everybody? So we are doing a live video presentation today. A few people, hopefully, are going to be joining this meeting. It's going to be about fundamentals of exercise. So I want to first see how many people are joining the meeting, and then I will kind of give an introduction of sorts about what we are going to discuss in this meeting. And I don't want to do it before that because in case anybody joins, then we'll kind of have to, do the introduction again. But let's say if people do not join, because I did kind of give everybody a last minute notice about this meeting, then we will just go on with this meeting. And I will shoot this video and I will put it up on YouTube so that everybody can watch. So we have a group called Keep Training. It's a group full of coaches and trainers and like professionals and athletes from all over the country. And a lot of them are based around Bombay. And this group honestly has been quite dead for a while because of nobody's fault but my own, because I started this group last year. But I mean, you'll have to go to my main channel and see why I kind of did not keep up with consistent activity on that group. But anyway, all of that aside, the group went dead for quite a while. But now I have decided and I am trying my best to revive the group and get some good conversations going on this group because it's very important. We have such a nice opportunity that we have all these coaches and all these professionals from all different sectors of work, of the field, and the country, of course, on this group. So, we can use this and have some really good conversations, exchange ideas, brainstorm, discuss a bunch of different things. And something fruitful is definitely going to come out of it for everybody. So it's 1 p.m. It's 1 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon, and I personally like Monday mornings quite a lot because it's like the start of a week, start of a fresh week, and I have my whole routine set. So I like doing Mondays quite a lot, and then the whole week is kind of every single way, like every single day is pretty much the same. I'm doing the same things every single day except for this Sunday where things kind of tend to get a little bit lazy. And whenever they get a little lazy, I don't feel as invested into the day as I usually do. So that's one of the reasons why I'm also doing this meeting on 1 p.m. on a Sunday because trust me, if I was not doing this meeting, it would be very hard and very difficult for me to get up and get myself to do some kind of or any kind of productive work. Right. So that's why what I try to do is I try to keep my weekends busy by either scheduling or programming a bunch of client calls, check-in calls with all of the people that I'm working online with. And if I don't have a lot of that, because honestly, that does not take a lot of time, there's still a lot of time left in the day for Sunday. So now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to have work slots throughout the day, deep work slots throughout the day when I'm genuinely doing something productive. And so what tends to happen is when I do something productive, I can kind of feed off like you. I mean, you tend to feel energized right after you do something productive, and I can take that energy and then I can use it to move on with the day and do something else and do something else. And if I have enough of these stringed together one after other, then I have a genuinely good day. And it's important for me to have days like these because my baseline is not that great. So if I don't have days that are productive, and I'm not talking about hyper productivity, I don't necessarily need to be um, just doing something throughout the day. Although some days there's a massive yawn because that's what I'm talking about, right? My baseline is not that great because, like, what was I saying? Yeah, so I do not, except for a few days, I do not really need to be doing something continuously throughout the day, non-stop. However, I do have a couple of days like that throughout the week, but mostly, if I'm not engaged in good, meaningful work, if I'm not doing something, then my baseline is not that great. So I'd be sleeping, I'd be dozing off, I'd be watching a lot of YouTube or whatever, and until ultimately, like everything kind of just leads to me falling asleep. So yeah. So we got to give it about another another minute, I would say, and then let's see if anybody is joining. And if people are not joining, then I'm just going to go ahead with this video. Um, get my work done. Get my work done. Put up, record this nice little video, nice little topic of discussion. Put it up on YouTube. So at the end of this video, I'll feel great. I'll have my work done. And something valuable goes up on YouTube, something that can be of value to people. So even if people do not join about, I will have a video ready for about 40 people to watch, whenever they do feel like watching or educating themselves. And then a good thing that actually comes out of not doing a live presentation is that in live presentations, I'm constrained by a very small subset of the entire group joining the live presentation. And however, that's always good to have because you have, people that are communicating with you in real time. But a good thing about a video going up on YouTube is that people, all 40 of them, can just watch whenever they want to watch. So that's that. All right, I feel like it's 1:05. I've given people about 5 minutes to join now. If people are not joining, I'm just going to go ahead and start off this video, shoot my stuff, and move on with my day. And if somebody does end up joining, we're going to welcome them, of course, to this meeting, and yeah, give them the brief and a proper understanding of what we're doing. So yeah, so I'm opening all kinds of weird shit that I should not be opening. Anyway, so our topic for discussion today is basically, so this is when I made this. So here's a little confession. I basically made this presentation quite a while ago. I started working on this somewhere around mid-December, and that is when I kind of named this presentation "Force Between Two Bodies and Muscular Action." And to be honest, I have changed some of the contents of this presentation yesterday when I felt like, because when I was making this presentation, I was just creating content. I did not really have an end goal or a specific end goal for this content. So I was just creating the content. I did not have an end goal. But yesterday, when I realized that, okay, I'm probably going to use this presentation as a real presentation for people that are going to be interacting with me in real time, or at the very least, I'm going to put it up on YouTube, then I thought, oh, our friend, one of my good friends has joined. Let's go. Let's invite him in. Hello. Yash, are you on?
Yeah, I'm on.
What's up, bro? Good afternoon. So. I thought nobody's joining, so I just started recording the video and I thought I'll just put it up on YouTube as a presentation. I'm glad that you joined.
Yeah, I just got here after a tournament.
Where are you at the moment?
Jamshedpur, my hometown only, but I had a night tournament, like
Hmm.
prize money tournament. So
Oh, wow.
it was in a different city. I just got here
Did you
at my
win?
home. Now I lost in the semi-finals.
So that's what, like 2, 3 wins in the tournament.
It was 4 wins.
Wow, that's amazing. That's so nice. That's pretty nice. Oh, there you are. So how are things with you? How's everything going?
Uh, it's been good. Like the motivation has gotten down. Like the training frequency thing. Like I don't want to train every day. I don't know. It's bugging me.
It's the winter. It's the winter.
Yeah. Do you believe that?
I don't know if I believe that for everybody, but I feel that personally. In winters, I don't like to train that a lot. Sometimes I feel like that
Exactly.
consistency does go down.
Yeah, I don't know why it happens, but during the summers and as soon as February, March, April, it starts and आई फील लाइक हाँ चलो अब रोज ट्रेनिंग करना है, अब
Hmm.
कुछ भी हो जाए, रात में 3 घंटे सो कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता है, ट्रेन करना है। बट अब इट्स लाइक अरे 2 दिन में एक बार ट्रेनिंग कर लिया काफी।
It's just something about that cold that makes you feel like just burrowing down and just, just relaxing and sleeping. That feels really nice.
इट फील्स नाइस फिजिकली, बट मेंटली वो बहुत ऐसा इशू कर देता है क्या।
Well, that's true as well. That's true as well.
तो स्टार्ट करना है या वेट करना है अभी?
Uh, See, yeah, I mean, we can wait we can start actually. If it's just the two of us, actually, we can, just go to the exercises also and just see at a bunch of these setups. But let's see if somebody else hops on. I'm not sure, but I don't want to wait too long as well because we have limited time. So yeah, I feel like we can start off. So basically, I made this presentation quite a while ago, and when I was making this, I did not have an end goal in mind that what do I want to do with this, where do I want to put it up, and all that. So I named it Force Between Two Bodies and Muscle Action because these are two things that that are present in any exercise. There are three levels that I look at. I mean, that anybody looks at whenever we exercise so that we can create some kind of an adaptation. And adaptation is kind of going to occur over a long time span, and that's your macro cycle, right? Basic macro cycle, mesocycle, microcycle. So usually whenever you're programming, and like, there are different considerations that go into doing a macro cycle program, doing a mesocycle program, and doing a microcycle program. So when I say macro cycle, I mean anything from a few weeks to a few months. What is the overall objective of a training block? Right? What are the adaptations that we are looking to achieve in this objective, and what is the timeline that we have, total timeline? When we look at mesocycle programming, we mean basically a handful of workouts that keep repeating in a cycle. So that's for the average person, average trainee, that's a week. That's a week of training. So you have certain workouts that you do in a week, then you repeat that cycle again and again. And there are things that change cycle from cycle. So we have to consider things like what are the time constraints in every single week that we have, how many sessions can the athlete do, how much time can the athlete put into training, how much time would recovery take. So these are considerations that you need to have to program your week or 10 days or whatever mesocycle you're setting. And then you also have to consider, okay, depending on what my overall objective is, what should be the objective of this week. So if 6 weeks down the line I want to be in peak shape for a competition, then I cannot be doing peak shape training this week. I probably need to be doing, base building training in the first week so that I can get to that peak shape. So that consideration has to be there. What we are talking about today is a very specific topic in microcycle programming. So microcycle programming में you need to know कि एक single workout का objective क्या है, आज के दिन मैं क्या चाहता हूँ अपने workout से, am I what kind of a stimulus or what kind of a stress do I want to apply on the body that will help me be in accordance with the mesocycle objective and overall be in accordance with my total objective of the entire cycle, right? And within that, you
बराबर।
always ask this important question that what muscle has to be worked, and how do we work it. The problem, because see, this presentation is basically a solution that we are providing. We're talking about a solution, right? A perspective, and every perspective arises from a problem that we are trying to solve. और जो मेन प्रॉब्लम मेरे को दिखता है कॉमन परसेप्शन में पब्लिक का भी ये, फॉर द एवरेज ट्रेनर इन द जिम, यू वॉक इन टू अ कमर्शियल जिम and this is the problem, right? People just know the name of an exercise or the name of an equipment, and then they can put a label of the name of the muscle on it. एक पेक डेक फ्लाई चेस्ट पे काम करेगा, एक ओवरहेड प्रेस प्रोबेबली शोल्डर पे काम कर रहा है, एक बेंच प्रेस चेस्ट के लिए बना है. मोस्ट लोगों का जो परसेप्शन एंड वर्किंग नॉलेज ऑफ एन एक्सरसाइज इज जस्ट लिमिटेड टू दिस. Now what happens is, within this group of people, within this, within all these people going to gyms, there will be a smaller subset of people जो लोग स्टेबलाइजिंग मसल्स के बारे में बात करेंगे कि अच्छा चलो एक बेंच प्रेस में चेस्ट पे काम हो रहा है, बट ट्राइसेप और एंटीरियर डेल्ट इस एक्सरसाइज को स्टेबलाइज कर रहा है, राइट? एंड देन दैट्स सच अ वेग टर्म. व्हेन वी से स्टेबलाइज कर रहा है, इसका मतलब क्या है? व्हाट डज स्टेबिलिटी इवन मीन? And I'll tell you what that vagueness leads to. That vagueness leads to weird stuff like एक ट्रेनर है, ही हैज अ वर्किंग अंडरस्टैंडिंग दैट एक बेंच प्रेस चेस्ट के लिए बना होता है, एंड इस चेस्ट में ट्राइसेप स्टेबिलिटी एंड ट्राइसेप एंड एंटीरियर डेल्ट स्टेबलाइजर मसल जैसे काम कर रहा है। ठीक है। अब उस ट्रेनर को फॉर सम रीजन ये स्ट्राइक हुआ दिमाग में कि मेरा जो क्लाइंट है वो बेंच प्रेस नहीं कर पा रहा है बिकॉज दे लैक स्टेबिलिटी इन दिस एक्सरसाइज। देन दे आर लाइक ओके, ही लैक स्टेबिलिटी, stabilizing muscles are triceps and shoulders. Let me figure out a stability exercises for triceps and shoulders. And this is where all these weird exercises originate from, where you see people lifting a kettlebell turn upside down. There is probably a resistance band hanging from that. There is some kind of a weight hanging on the resistance band, and then you're trying to create instability and you're trying to lift that up. And in the trainer's mind, they are trying to build stability in the shoulder, and that's just so vague. So you see how the first level of assumption that you make, it leads to these series of assumptions that you keep making, and before you even know it, you have birthed a very weird exercise that you put up on the internet that probably blows up, that a lot of people are doing, and then we are caught in this vicious cycle of just useless exercises being out there. And that just, more people look at it, more people get in this mentality of, okay, there is a stability muscle, then I need to create an unstable constraint, and that will probably help me work on stability and all of that. So that is basically an example of what kind of a problem you can kind of create if you have a very vague perception of an exercise, जहाँ पे आपकी knowledge सिर्फ इस तक limited है कि exercise का नाम ये होता है and ये इस muscle पे काम कर रहा है. That's the average person, that's the average gym trainer.
Yesterday I saw a post from Alec Blenis. Usme he was talking about like certain healthy exercises, like do this for healthy knees, do this for healthy shoulders. But healthy for who? Healthy for me is different from a person who's 40 years old, haven't trained in 4 years. But what is healthy for him? What is healthy for me? That's what I think. This is a different. What do I say? Different situation, hai, but kind of same concept. Hai.
It's you're exactly on point there. I mean, you cannot have, and we can have an entire conversation about that, where you make posts about, one person makes posts about, okay, these are top five healthy exercises for shoulder or top five healthy exercises for spine. And then of course, the point that you're saying that these five exercises will work for everybody, and that is where you're exactly correct, that how do we even know that the people doing the exercises have the same conditions, right? You can have a 40-year-old that has never trained, and you can have a young 20-year-old athlete that trains constantly. And the definition of what is healthy for them, what will help them improve their health of a certain body part, could be very different. So that's that. And at the same time, there's an argument to be made against all of these exercises that count as healthy, right? Why do I flip a kettlebell upside down and slowly lift it up, and that counts as a stability movement, or that counts as a healthy movement for shoulders, right? And why is not a bench press healthy movement at shoulders? So, and those are some complex problems that a lot of people run into, but some basic problems that any trainee who does not have, or who does not understand what essentially an exercise is, can run into, is that, let's say you only understand that if I have a bench press, I can work the chest. If I have a pec deck fly, I can work the chest. What if you walk into a gym and there are both of these things are just not there? What do you do then? Right? If you want to work the quads and there is no leg extension machine and you do not know how to squat, or there is no equipment to squat, then what are you doing to target your quads? What do you do? And that's genuinely a question I want you to think about. That if I give you a muscle, if I tell you, okay, I want you to work like, let's say, the trap muscle, but there are no dumbbells, right? There are no dumbbells, there is nowhere to hang, and there's nothing, then how do you work the trap? So if there is no equipment that you're familiar with, and if you walk into a gym, where you cannot, where there's just basically limited resources available, then what do you do? And that is a real skill set, to be able to walk into any kind of a room, just take a look at, okay, this is what is present in front of me. I only have a bench. I only have a bench. I have one resistance band. That's it. But I have a target in mind, because going back to this, of course, if you're walking into a gym, you're probably working towards an objective. You probably have an idea of what your week is going to look like. You probably have an objective for what you are going to do in that particular session. I mean, we are assuming that. A lot of people don't have that also. A lot of people just don't know what they're doing in the gym. But we are making the assumption that these things are sorted, that you have walked into that session knowing what muscle you want to work on, right? So you walk into a gym knowing what kind of a muscle you want to work on. Then it's a skill set to be able to understand how to create fixed points, how to set up the body in accordance with some external object so that you can create that muscular action, so that you can target that muscular action and you can make that shit happen. And when you know, when you have this skill set, it allows, it opens up so many opportunities for you, because if you're a trainer that's visiting somebody at that place, or you're training somebody at a place with limited resources, such as my studio lacks a lot of equipments that are just not there and that would help us target and isolate a lot of muscles. But we are still able to do that because of this fundamental understanding, even though we do not have equipments, even though we do not even have a bench rack for setting up the bench, bench press or squats. But we are still able to work on quads. It's not like we are not able to work on quads or not able to isolate our chest. So this is what we'll try to understand. But first, some questions. Do we know? I mean, how many of these can you answer? Do we know what are the different planes in which we can observe the movement of the body? Now, of course, movement is complex. It's not like it is limited to 3 planes or 4 planes. It's everything is happening all at once everywhere. But जब हम observe करते हैं exercise, what are the 3 planes in which we are observing the exercise? Can you recall the 3 names and the 3 planes? Like, can you visualize that?
Tell this thing, transverse and fuck, I got so old. I can't remember the third one. Yaar, I've gotten very old. Shit, I forgot my cousin's name the other day. अरे बोल
Sagittal,
ना,
frontal, and
part where you
transverse.
jumped in.
Okay, so you got sagittal,
Frontal, हाँ, frontal plane, sorry.
right?
मुझे याद है.
You got sagittal. When we look at the body from the side, if anything is moving ahead and back, that's your sagittal, right?
हाँ,
And
frontal is here.
we got frontal. All of this is frontal, right? This plane. And then
Yes,
we got
side to side,
transverse.
yes.
Then we got transverse.
Rotatory, correct.
ऊपर से नीचे अगर हम बॉडी को देख रहे हैं, we can't see any kind of rotation about that axis at transfer. So basic 3 planes.
Yeah.
So thoda sa, if we go deep into this, let's talk about the sagittal plane. This is like whenever we see sagittal movements, we kind of try to look at the body from the side. Now, this does not mean that sagittal plane movement only occurs when somebody is standing up or sitting down and you're looking at them from the side. If somebody is in a plank, even then we need to be able to understand, okay, how do I observe sagittal plane movement in a plank? How do I observe sagittal plane movement in a clamshell? Because it's just planes of observations, right? So it's
Correct.
not like planes of movement is only limited to 3 planes. But sometimes when we are trying to study a movement, or when we are trying to, observe a movement and deduce conclusions about a movement, it helps to reduce our scope down to these 3 planes. So you can break things down better. It goes back to that same conversation, that people say that there are 7 fundamental movements. You got hinge, push, pull, squat, and all of that. That's absolute bullshit. It's just not possible that there are only 7 movements that the body can do. But for the sake of studying, for the sake of observation and all that, it helps to say that, okay, let's just reduce our scope down to these 7 fundamental movements that we can observe in the body. So anyway, coming back to sagittal plane movement, any kind of extension or flexion that you see at the neck, at the spine, at the hip, at the knee, ankle, foot, whatever it is, right? It is all sagittal plane. If I flex my neck forward or extend my neck back, that's my neck moving in the sagittal plane. Same goes for the spine. If I'm flexing my spine forward, whether it is straight, whether it is curved, whatever it is, or I'm extending it back, it's sagittal plane. Now, if I'm in a plank and I'm doing down dog to up dog, that is again sagittal plane movement. It's just that I'm flexing and extending in a plank position. If I'm
Correct.
standing and doing it, I'm doing a Jefferson curl and a back extension, that's still a sagittal plane movement. Then we got the frontal plane, which is basically, if you have a frontal plane, you're looking at a plane cutting the body, from side to side. So you observe it from the front. So any kind of abduction, adduction movements, whether it is abduction or adduction of the arms, or whether it is abduction or adduction of the legs, they are all frontal plane movements. Side bending movements. So I'm side bending my spine, side bending my neck, side bending my, what else can be side bent? Not much else, right? So these are all okay. Scapula moving, upward rotation of scapula, downward rotation of scapula when I'm moving my arms. I mean, that goes along with your abduction, adduction. That's also frontal plane, right? Eversion, inversion of wrist and foot. So this is my foot. If I evert it, if I invert it, same goes for the wrist. Eversion, inversion. Again, frontal plane movement. Sorry, I'm saying it's a sagittal. It's all frontal plane movement. Transverse plane movement is going to be any kind of rotation that you see from top down. If I'm this way, so if I'm sitting right, let me, what is this? This is sagittal plane. If I'm not correct, when the arm goes forward, that's arm flexion. Then the arm goes. I still don't understand this why that's the case. Why do we say that the arm flexes when it goes forward? But
Yeah, it's confusing.
right, very weird, very weird. But anyway, it's arm
Like,
flexion. So we have arm flexion right here. And now when I rotate it outwards, this is basically a transverse plane abduction of the arm. So this is a transverse
Correct.
because when you look at from top down, we got transverse plane movement. So, and this is true for even the pelvis when it rotates externally, right? When it opens up, when we have pelvis here, that's again transverse plane. So femur, when the femur rotates outside, that's transverse plane. Shin, when the shin rotates outside, when the foot rotates outside, all of that is transverse plane rotation. So we have abduction, adduction, and a lot of rotation in the transverse plane. Now, any movement is going to be a compound or a complex of all three of these happening at the same time. Wherever we are moving, some segments of the body will be moving in transverse plane, some will be moving in sagittal plane, some will be moving in frontal plane. Just as an example, when you look at a person squatting, you can see a lot of sagittal plane extension flexion happening, right? Your knees extend, your knees flex when you go down, your hip flexes when you go down, and all of that is in sagittal plane. But for that squat to happen, there has to be frontal plane opening of the hips, closing of the hips, and opening of the hips again. Sorry, transverse plane opening, closing, and opening of the hips again. The femur has to rotate in the transverse plane. The shins have to rotate in the transverse plane. So all of these things do happen. So it's like even when you look at a quote unquote sagittal plane compound lift, in isolated segments of the body, there's transverse plane shit happening. The next question is, what is the fundamental anatomy of a muscle? Like, what is the common thing that's true for every single muscle?
I don't understand. Like what?
एक muscle का anatomy क्या
only
होता है? That's the function. That's what the muscle is doing, and that's the next
हाँ
question.
इसके लिए
But
हाँ
anatomy क्या है? मतलब muscle कैसा दिखता है? What will every single muscle look like?
it's there's an insertion point and that thing.
Exactly.
अच्छा
Exactly.
that's what you're asking. Okay.
Yes. So any muscle, right? Whether it's a muscle in your
हाँ
any single skeletal muscle, whether it's any muscle that is attached to a skeleton, it has an origin point. That origin point is fixed. Your pec muscle vaguely starts at the sternum. It attaches, and then
correct.
every single muscle has an insertion point that it inserts into. We can go into the
Yes.
fact that these connections between the bone and the muscle has a tendon unit also. So it's the bone kind of going into the tendon, the going tendon going into the muscle. So if you kind of see, then this is very interesting that all three of these are skeletal tissues that are a bit, they have some ability for some flexibility and some compression. But the bone is very hard. It goes into the tendon that lightens up a little bit in density and in toughness, right? And then, but the tendon is not as light and pliable as the muscle. Then the tendon lightens up a little bit and it becomes a muscle. So it's basically it's just all skeletal tissue. It just becomes less and less dense and more pliable and stretchable. So that's interesting. But every single muscle is going to have a point of origin. It's going to have a point of insertion, and it's going to have a fixed length because of a point of origin and point of insertion same here, and it never changes. I mean, I hope to God it never changes. If you go through an accident, it will change, right? You can break you can break away the bone and you can change the insertion point, but usually I hope that's not happened for you guys, but usually the points don't change. So we say that in anatomical resting phase, when a person is standing, every single muscle has a fixed length. It has a fixed origin and insertion point. And now we look at muscle action. What does every single muscle do you think? Muscle anatomy.
Contracts.
It contracts. And what will happen
Hmm.
when a muscle contracts? The muscle will pull the point of insertion closer to the point
Towards point of origin.
of origin. So when my chest muscle contracts, my arm comes closer to my sternum. That's basically,
No,
if
correct.
my chest muscle originates at the sternum and it inserts at the upper arm, then what is happening when my chest contracts? My upper arm is moving closer to the sternum. The point of insertion is moving closer to the point of origin. And this is again fundamentally true for every single muscle. I don't care what muscle it is. It is going to be true for every single muscle. You talk about a lat. When a lat contracts, a lat, if I think it vaguely originates at the spine, some spinal segment the lat originates at, right? A lot of spinal segments actually. So there you go. That's the lat right there. And right, and it originates at the again. It originates at the arm, at the back of the upper arm. What happens when the lat contracts? It pulls the arm closer to the spine. So your arm, your point of insertion is moving closer to the point of origin. Same goes for the calf muscle. A calf muscle originates somewhere at the back of the knee. It is going to insert at the heel. What happens when the calf contracts? It pulls the heel closer to the knee. Right? Now, it has lengthened. So when my bicep muscle contracts, now what needs to contract as what will basically be the consequence of this exercise setup? The consequence of this exercise setup will be that now if you contract your bicep, you will be able to flex your elbow back. So the muscle that is lengthened will be able to shorten again. In case of a bicep, it is important to distinguish that sometimes when we say lengthening of a muscle or shortening of a muscle, we mean that in relative terms because in anatomical resting state, the elbow is already extended. It's not like the elbow is always flexed. So for us to even go into elbow extension, we have to start from a point of relative elbow flexion, right? Just look at a calf raise. In a calf raise, when we talk about external forces, right? It's easy to see कि इसमें barbell bench press में external force is the weight of the barbell. Bicep curl में चलो external force हो गया the weight of the dumbbell or the barbell that you're holding. But a lot of times people do not realize that whenever you're doing body weight movements such as a calf raise or even if you're running out in the road, there is still going to be external force present, although it is not obviously apparent. Right? I cannot see the external force. I cannot see an equipment. I cannot see a free weight. But external force क्या है? Let's think about running for a second. Running में external force क्या है? What is the external force that we are interacting with?
The body itself, gravity.
The friction while we are running for a very long period of time, we are putting body through a very
Gravity acting upon the body.
But
that is only of gravity would only come into subject अगर हम hill पे भाग रहे हैं, right?
no, I mean gravity is always acting on the body. Right now also the gravity is acting on the
हाँ
body. That's why we are able to sit down.
नहीं, but मतलब अगर रनिंग में देख रहे हैं वैसे बोल रहा हूँ.
Running maybe yes, of course gravity is acting on the body, but I mean where is the gravity pulling you? What are you interacting with?
The ground.
The ground. There you go. That's your system. So when you look at a person running, if there was no ground, there would be no action. There would be no running. What are you pressing against? It's like an
Yeah,
overcoming
exactly.
isometric that happens again and again and again and again and again, right? In an overcoming isometric, you have an immovable object and you're applying force against it, right? In case of running, if you were not able to push your foot against this thing, which is basically the ground, which does not move, the ground is not going to move anywhere, but you use the ground as an object, as an external object against which you apply muscular force, and then it gives you an external force against which you can keep applying muscular force and keep moving. So that's what running is. When you do a push up, the force that's acting on you is again gravity, but there would be no push up if there was no ground, if there was no surface. So the other object involved in that exercise is the ground, is the surface, basically the surface that you are working with. So in case of a calf raise, we don't have an external object, we don't have any kind of a weight that we can see. मतलब calf raise हम बोलेंगे ओके calf raise में external force तभी आएगा जब हम barbell से calf raise कर रहे हैं, dumbbell से calf raise कर रहे हैं. No, you should have to understand that there is gravity acting on the body. The gravity is acting down on the body, right? So when you raise your calf up, when the calf contracts, the heel moves closer to the knee, right? So what is the anatomy of the calf? The calf is going to originate at the back of the knee. It is going to insert at the back of the heel. Whenever the calf contracts, it pulls the point of insertion close to the point of origin. And it does that against the force of gravity. Because gravity is acting downwards, right? It is relatively pulling your heel away. Like if there was no ground, like let's say if we have a fixed point right here and we have nothing under the heel, what happens? What happens if we are doing a deficit calf raise? The gravity is straight up going to pull the heel away from the knee, right? Because the heel falls down to whatever range is available. If I just have a if I'm doing like a floating heel calf raise where my toes are fixed somewhere, I have a fixed point, but there is nothing underneath the heel. And if I apply zero calf force, right? If I don't contract my calves at all, what will happen? The heel will fall down. The heel will drop down. That's the gravity acting on the body weight, entire body weight. So now when I contract the calf, my calf is basically going to come up, and I'm going to be able to lift my body up. Let's get a little complex with this because these are some very easy exercises, right? Can anybody tell me what exercise this is? Krishna.
Open again.
Groin raises.
This is what?
Groin
Open
raises, huh?
again.
Groin raises. Yeah, you call these groin raises. But since we are trying to learn, we will fundamentally break this exercise down. कि ये exercise में fixed points क्या है? पहले बात करते हैं fixed points के बारे में. Where have I fixed my body on this exercise?
The knee and the elbow.
The knee and the elbow, right? And it's important to understand that I fix my knee on top of the bench. On top of the bench. That is what allows for this exercise to even happen. And as a result of this fixed point, what is the external force acting on this exercise? On the body in this exercise? What's the external force, guys? Come on. It's the same as clamshells.
The ground, yeah.
The gravity, not the ground per se, the gravity, right? Fixed point hai chair, fixed point hai elbow on the ground, and gravity is acting downwards. That's why you can see right here I've fallen down to the ground. So let's describe this falling down to the ground in terms of the planes, right? What movement has happened in what plane?
So again, spine bend हो रहा है frontal
Yes.
plane पे.
We got
And
frontal plane side bend of the spine. What else?
hip का abduction हो रहा है.
There you go. What muscle lengthens when the hip abducts?
Yeah,
I don't know what it's called. Apna inside of the thigh.
Yes, groin. Adductors,
like that.
right?
Hmm.
Now, if I fire up my groin, what will happen?
Shorten
So-
होगा और फिर मेरा spine भी और एक straight movement. हाँ वही.
Yes. So my obliques work to get me out of the side bend, and when my groin shortens, my hip travels back. So I have relative adduction of the hip again, right? So this was me. The hip was abducted. I move into adduction because my groin is shortening. So that is why the groin muscles are also called adductors, because it adducts the leg. It brings the knee back to the center line of the body, right? So because why, again, going back to the fundamentals of what we were learning, what is the action of a muscle? What does a muscle do when it contracts, right? A muscle, whenever it contracts, it's going to have a fixed origin point, fixed insertion point. So a groin basically originates at the hip, inside of the hip, and it inserts on the inside of the knee. So अपना insertion point and origin point set है. What happens when the groin muscle contracts? It shortens and it is going to move the insertion point closer to the origin point. Now, what does it mean? Origin point, insertion point, origin point के पास कैसे आ रहा है? Femur का length छोटा तो नहीं हो सकता. Knee hip के पास नहीं आ सकता. It basically brings the knee closer to the center line of the body. So when you look at the body in the frontal plane, if in basically frontal plane abduction, this leg right here, it is going to move outside. But when the groin muscle contracts, the leg swings back inside. So when you look at the knee, अगर हम abduct करें पैर को frontal plane में, this knee is going to move out. But when it adducts, it moves inside. When it moves inside, the point of insertion obviously comes closer to the point of origin and the muscle shortens. Is there any other exercise that we should look at? What exercise can you think of? Just give me any exercise. Let's look at a pull-up, shall we? This is the problem. This is really what the problem is. that ये ऐसे जब ये लोग लाल करके दिखा देते हैं, so ये just people just label, okay, a pull up probably works on the lats, but why does it work on the lat? Nobody knows, right? So when you don't have a pull up bar, okay, now what do I do to work my lat? I have no idea how to work my lat. If I don't have a lat pull down and I don't have a pull up bar, I will be clueless how to work my lat, because all I know is that pull ups is equal to lats, lat pull down equal to lat. I don't know anything except that. But if I know I want to work my lat, I will ask myself, where does the lat start and where does it end? The lat starts at the spine, it attaches at the upper arm. Okay, how will I feel lat contraction? Let me lengthen the lat. How does the lat lengthen? If the point of insertion moves away from the point of origin. So if I do frontal plane abduction of the arm, if my arm abducts in the frontal plane, my lat will probably lengthen. If I create a fixed point that allows me to then work against some kind of an external force and then adduct my arm back, I will achieve lat work. I will be able to work lats. That's how you work lat anywhere and everywhere. And this is what is common between every single movement that works the lat. Whether you look at a banded pull down, whether you look at a high row, whether you look at a pull up, or whatever it is, chin up, right? It all starts with a fixed point of you holding the bar. So it would not be possible if you're not holding the bar. As soon as you hold the bar and you hang down, you ensure that gravity is working down on you, and the gravity pulls your arms relatively into frontal plane abduction. Now, what has happened when frontal plane abduction has happened? The point of insertion of the lat has moved away from the point of origin of the lat, and the lat muscle has lengthened. And now, when I apply muscular force, boom, I'm going to have myself a pull up. This only solves a very small portion of our total programming knowledge, that what muscle has to be worked. Now then we come to the point कि okay, कितना stress डालना है according to the objective of the session. हमने setup तो figure out कर लिया. Now what is the intensity of the external force that's required? Then you come to mesocycle programming, then you come to macrocycle programming. But today we have just kind of tried to explore this topic of what muscle has to be worked and how do you get that muscle to work basically.